The Opium Wars, a clash of empires, a story of trade, addiction, and brute force. In the 19th century, Great Britain and the Qing Dynasty collided, reshaping their destinies. This wasn't about borders or ideologies, it was about commerce and control. Britain craved tea, silk, and porcelain from the East. China, self-sufficient, needed little from Britain. The trade imbalance led to a controversial solution: opium. The British East India Company exploited China's demand, flooding it with opium. Addiction spread, tearing at the fabric of Chinese society. Opium, derived from the poppy plant, was nothing new to China. It had been used medicinally for centuries, but the British supplied opium, readily available and highly addictive, created a crisis of unprecedented scale. Millions, from peasants to officials, fell prey to its allure. Silver, which once flowed into China, began hemorrhaging out, used to purchase the drug that was crippling the nation. This economic drain, coupled with the social decay caused by widespread addiction, threatened the very foundations of the Qing Dynasty.
The Qing Emperor, alarmed by the crisis, took decisive action. He issued edicts, banned the trade, and even appointed a staunch official, Lin Zexu, to eradicate the opium trade at its source, Canton. Lin Zexu, known for his integrity and resolve, became the face of China's resistance against British opium.
The stage was set for a confrontation. The British, accustomed to dictating terms of trade, saw China's defiance as an affront to their economic interests. The Chinese, determined to protect their sovereignty and well-being, refused to back down. A clash was inevitable. The First Opium War from 1839 to 1842, a testament to Britain's naval superiority, ended in a humiliating defeat for China. The Treaty of Nanking, the first of the Unequal Treaties, forced China to cede Hong Kong to Britain, open more ports to foreign trade, and pay a hefty indemnity.
The Opium Wars marked a turning point in Chinese history. It shattered the myth of Qing invincibility, exposed the dynasty's weaknesses, and paved the way for a century of foreign exploitation. The once mighty Middle Kingdom was now vulnerable, its fate intertwined with the ambitions of Western powers.
The Opium Wars weren't just about opium. They were about power, trade, and the clash of civilizations. They had far-reaching consequences, shaping the destinies of China and Britain while leaving an indelible mark on the course of global history. To understand the Opium Wars, we must first journey back to the 17th century, to the birth of a trading behemoth, the British East India Company. Granted a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I, the company set its sights on the riches of the East.
Their initial focus was on spices, textiles, and other exotic goods. The East India Company, with its own army and navy, wasn't just a trading enterprise. Their influence grew rapidly, becoming a dominant player in the Eastern trade.
Their ambition soon fell upon the fabled Middle Kingdom. China, under the Qing Dynasty, was a world unto itself. The Chinese demanded payment in silver for their prized tea, silk, and porcelain. The solution, as fate would have it, was opium.
The Qing Dynasty, wary of foreign influence, restricted European trade to Canton. This system, known as the Canton system, allowed Chinese merchants, the Kohong, to act as intermediaries.
While profitable, this system chafed at the British, who sought greater access to Chinese markets. The British faced a significant obstacle: a chronic trade deficit. The Chinese appetite for silver was insatiable.
The East India Company found a solution in the opium poppy fields of India. Opium, a highly addictive narcotic, was banned in China except for medicinal purposes. The East India Company exploited the growing demand for the drug.
By the early 19th century, British ships laden with opium were arriving on China's shores. Chinese officials soon realized the devastating consequences of widespread opium addiction. The Qing dynasty, founded on Confucian principles of order and harmony, found itself grappling with a crisis of unprecedented scale. Opium addiction seeped into all levels of Chinese society, from the peasantry to the elite. The once proud empire was in the throes of a national emergency, its social fabric fraying at the seams.
The economic consequences were equally dire. The outflow of silver destabilized the Chinese economy, leading to inflation and hardship. The Qing government, already facing internal unrest, recognized the existential threat posed by the opium trade. Something had to be done, and soon.
The Emperor Dao Guang, alarmed by the reports reaching his court, resolved to act. In 1838, he appointed Lin Zexu, a high-ranking official known for his integrity and resolve, as imperial commissioner to end the opium trade. Lin, armed with the emperor's authority, arrived in Canton determined to confront the British head-on. Lin Zexu, a staunch Confucian scholar, was unwavering in his belief that the opium trade was a moral scourge that threatened the very soul of China. He saw the British merchants, driven by greed and indifference, as the architects of his nation's suffering. His mission was clear: to eradicate the opium trade and restore China's honor.
Lin demanded that the British surrender their opium stocks, a demand that was met with resistance. The British, accustomed to dictating terms of trade, balked at the audacity of the Chinese. They saw Lin's actions as a threat to their economic interests and a violation of their perceived right to free trade.
Tensions escalated as Lin imposed a blockade on foreign ships in Canton harbour, effectively holding them hostage. The British, caught between their economic interests and the growing Chinese resistance, appealed to London for military intervention. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations, a confrontation that would have far-reaching consequences for both nations and the world. The tension in Canton was palpable. Lin Zexu, resolute in his mission, demanded the surrender of all opium held by British merchants.
He confined foreigners to the factories of Canton, cutting off supplies and communication. The British Superintendent of Trade, Charles Elliot, found himself caught between the unwavering Chinese official and the increasingly frustrated British merchants.
Elliot, sensing the gravity of the situation, made a strategic decision. He agreed to surrender the opium, over 20,000 chests, to Lin Zexu.
This appeasement, however, came with a caveat. Elliot insisted that the British government, not the merchants, be compensated for the surrendered opium.
Lin, relieved to have rid Canton of the poisonous drug, oversaw its public destruction. Tons of opium were dissolved in a mixture of water, lime and salt, then flushed into the Pearl River. This act of defiance resonated throughout China, bolstering national pride and solidifying Lin Zexu's image as a national hero. News of the opium surrender and the subsequent economic losses reached London. The British government, outraged by what they perceived as a national humiliation, demanded retribution.
Parliament, after heated debates, narrowly voted in favour of military action against China. The die was cast. The British lion was about to roar.
In June 1840, a British naval force arrived at the mouth of the Pearl River, marking the beginning of the First Opium War. The British, with their superior firepower and naval technology, easily outmatched the antiquated Chinese defences. Coastal towns were bombarded and British troops landed, capturing strategic points along the coast. The First Opium War ended in 1842 with the signing of the Treaty of Nanking, the first of the unequal treaties that would come to define China's relationship with the West for the next century. The treaty forced China to cede Hong Kong to Britain, open 5 more ports to foreign trade, and pay a hefty indemnity for the war and the confiscated opium.
The Treaty of Nanking was a bitter pill for China to swallow. It represented a loss of sovereignty, a blow to national pride, and the beginning of a period of foreign exploitation. The Qing Dynasty, once seen as invincible, was now exposed as weak and vulnerable.
The impact of the treaty went beyond territorial concessions. It ushered in an era of extraterritoriality where British citizens in China were subject to British law, not Chinese law. This provision further eroded Chinese sovereignty and created a system of legal inequality that fueled resentment and resistance. Section 4, the Taiping Rebellion. The Opium War and the subsequent Treaty of Nanking had a profound impact on Chinese society. The once proud empire found itself weakened, humiliated, and struggling to come to terms with its new place in the world.
The social and economic dislocations caused by the war exacerbated existing tensions, creating a breeding ground for unrest and rebellion. In 1850, a rebellion led by Hong Xiuquan, a charismatic figure who claimed to be the younger brother of Jesus Christ, erupted in southern China. The Taiping Rebellion, as it came to be known, was a complex and multifaceted uprising fueled by a potent mix of religious fervor, social grievances, and anti-Manchu sentiment.
The Taiping Rebellion, with its millenarian vision of a just and egalitarian society, quickly gained popular support. The rebels, known for their military prowess and strict discipline, swept through southern China, capturing major cities and threatening the very existence of the Qing Dynasty. Section 5. The Second Opium War. The Taiping Rebellion raging in the south further weakened the Qing dynasty, making it vulnerable to renewed foreign aggression. In 1856, a minor incident involving a Chinese-owned but British-registered ship, the Arrow, provided the pretext for the Second Opium War.
The British, eager to expand their influence in China and capitalize on the Qing dynasty's weakness, used the Arrow incident as a casus belli. They were joined by the French, who sought to avenge the killing of a missionary in Guangxi province.
The Second Opium War, from 1856 to 1860, proved to be even more disastrous for China than the first. British and French forces captured Canton and Tianjin, forcing the Qing court to flee Beijing. The Summer Palace, a symbol of imperial power and cultural heritage, was looted and burned by British troops in an act of retribution for the alleged torture and killing of British diplomats. Section 1. The Treaty of Tientsin. The Second Opium War culminated in the Treaty of Tientsin. Signed in 1858 under the shadow of Western gunships, it was even more humiliating than the Treaty of Nanking.
The terms forced China to open more ports, legalize the opium trade, and grant further concessions to Western powers. It marked a new low in Sino-Western relations. Solidifying extraterritoriality, it allowed foreigners to live under their own laws.
The Qing dynasty, weakened by internal rebellion, was further entangled in Western imperialism. The treaty fueled resentment, sowed nationalism, and exposed the Qing dynasty's vulnerability. The signing of the Treaty of Tientsin, however, did not bring an end to the conflict. The Qing court, reluctant to ratify the treaty and fueled by hardliners within the imperial court, attempted to resist further concessions.
This defiance proved to be a costly miscalculation. In 1860, British and French forces, enraged by renewed Chinese resistance, marched on Beijing, capturing the city and delivering a devastating blow to the Qing dynasty.
The culmination of this aggression was the ransacking and burning of the Yuanming Yuan, known in the West as the Summer Palace. The Summer Palace, a sprawling complex of gardens, temples, and palaces, was not just a seat of imperial power, it was a repository of Chinese art, culture, and history. Its destruction was a deliberate act of vandalism, intended to humiliate the Qing dynasty and demonstrate the consequences of defying Western might. The Second Opium War, often referred to as the Arrow War after the initial incident that sparked the conflict, had a seismic impact on China. It exposed the Qing dynasty's weakness and hastened its decline. The once formidable Middle Kingdom, humbled by Western military technology and ruthless diplomacy, found itself relegated to the periphery of the global order.
The war's legacy, however, went beyond military defeat and territorial concessions. It ignited a firestorm of change within China. The humiliation inflicted by the West forced the Chinese to confront their own weaknesses and to question the legitimacy of the ruling Qing dynasty.
The seeds of Chinese nationalism were sown in the ashes of the Summer Palace. A new generation of Chinese thinkers, reformers, and revolutionaries emerged, determined to modernize China, restore its former glory, and resist Western imperialism. The aftermath of the Opium Wars was a period of profound introspection and upheaval in China. The Qing dynasty, its authority shaken to its core, faced mounting internal and external pressures.
Amidst this turmoil, a new breed of Chinese leaders emerged, advocating for radical reforms to modernize the country and strengthen its defenses against foreign encroachment. These reformers, inspired by Western science, technology, and political thought, sought to adapt these ideas to the Chinese context.
The Opium Wars marked the beginning of what the Chinese would later call the Century of Humiliation. This period, spanning from the mid-19th to the mid-20th century, saw China subjected to a series of unequal treaties, foreign interventions, and territorial concessions.
The Opium Wars, though significant, were just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next century, China would face further aggression from other Western powers, including France, Russia, Germany, and Japan. Each incursion further chipped away at Chinese sovereignty and left an indelible mark on the national psyche.
Lin Zexu stands as a towering figure of resistance in the face of British aggression. Appointed imperial commissioner by the Qing Emperor in 1838, Lin was tasked with an impossible mission: eradicate the opium trade that was crippling China.
Known for his unwavering integrity and Confucian principles, Lin approached the task with unwavering determination. Lin's arrival in Canton sent shockwaves through the foreign factories. His edicts demanding the surrender of all opium were met with initial resistance from British merchants accustomed to dictating terms.
Lin, however, was not easily swayed. He imposed a strict blockade on foreign ships, effectively trapping them in Canton harbour until they complied. Section 3, Charles Elliot, A Study in Contradictions. Caught in the crossfire between Chinese defiance and British aggression stood Charles Elliot, the British Superintendent of Trade in China. Elliot, a complex and contradictory figure, found himself grappling with an impossible situation, torn between his duty to British interests and his growing unease with the opium trade.
Elliot understood the economic importance of the opium trade to British merchants and the British economy. However, he also recognized the devastating impact it had on Chinese society and the Qing Dynasty. His attempts to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis, including his controversial decision to surrender British opium stocks to Lin Zexu, ultimately failed to avert war.
Elliot's actions during the Opium Wars remain a subject of debate. Section 4, Hessian, the corrupt official who enabled a crisis. While the Opium Wars unfolded on the battlefields and in the halls of power, the seeds of the conflict were sown decades earlier, during the reign of the Qianlong Emperor. At the heart of this story lies Hessian, a powerful court official whose greed and corruption contributed to the conditions that made the opium trade so devastating for China.
Hessian, a handsome and ambitious man, rose to prominence as a favorite of the Qianlong Emperor. He amassed vast wealth and power through a system of bribery and extortion, exploiting his position for personal gain. His influence permeated every level of government, hindering effective governance and weakening the Qing dynasty from within.
Hessian's corruption had a direct impact on the opium trade. Section 1, the Treaty of Nanking, a bitter pill for China. The year is 1842. Smoke hangs heavy over the once proud Chinese city of Nanking. The streets, normally bustling with merchants and artisans, are eerily quiet, patrolled by British troops. The First Opium War, a clash of empires fueled by greed and ambition, has reached its bitter end.
Aboard the British warship HMS Cornwallis, representatives of the Qing Dynasty and the British Empire gather to sign a document that will shape the destiny of China for generations to come: the Treaty of Nanking. For the Qing officials, the terms of the treaty are a bitter pill to swallow. The document, dictated at gunpoint, represents not just a military defeat, but a profound loss of face and sovereignty.
With the signing of the Treaty of Nanking, a new chapter begins in Sino-Western relations, one marked by unequal treaties and growing foreign influence.
The 5 treaty ports, Shanghai, Xiamen, Guangzhou, Ningbo, and Fuzhou, become bustling centers of international commerce, transforming the economic and social landscape of coastal China.
British merchants, eager to capitalize on their newfound access, established trading houses, banks, and shipping companies.
Western goods, from textiles and machinery to opium and firearms, flood Chinese markets.
The influx of these goods, while beneficial to some segments of Chinese society, also disrupts traditional industries and creates economic dependency on the West. As Western influence seeps into China through the treaty ports, resentment simmers among the populace.
The Qing Dynasty, already weakened by corruption and internal strife, struggles to maintain order in the face of growing social and economic upheaval.
The Opium Wars, while a significant turning point, are merely a prelude to a period of even greater turmoil, the Taiping Rebellion.
In the mountainous region of Guangxi, a charismatic figure emerges, one who will channel the growing discontent into a rebellion that will shake the foundations of the Qing Dynasty.
The Taiping Rebellion, though ultimately crushed by Qing forces and their Western allies, leaves a lasting impact on China.
It exposes the deep-seated social and economic problems plaguing the country and highlights the Qing Dynasty's inability to provide for its people.
From the ashes of this devastating conflict, a new spirit begins to emerge: Chinese nationalism.
The humiliation of the Opium Wars, the unequal treaties, and the encroachment of foreign powers ignite a sense of shared identity and a determination to resist further exploitation.
Section 5. The Legacy of Humiliation, a turning point in Chinese history. The Opium Wars and the subsequent period of upheaval mark a turning point in Chinese history.
The Century of Humiliation, as it will later be known, leaves an indelible scar on the Chinese psyche, shaping the country's worldview and its relations with the West for generations to come.
The Qing Dynasty, though it clings to power for several more decades, never fully recovers from the blows it suffers during this period.
The Opium Wars expose the dynasty's weaknesses and undermine its legitimacy in the eyes of the Chinese people.
Section 1. The Opium Wars, a legacy of ashes and awakening. The Opium Wars were more than just a conflict between Britain and China. They were a seismic event that reverberated through the corridors of history, leaving an indelible mark on the global order.
The image of British warships bombarding Chinese coastal cities, forcing a proud empire to its knees through a combination of military might and economic coercion, became a defining symbol of Western imperialism in the 19th century.
For China, the Opium Wars were a brutal awakening, shattering the illusion of its own invincibility and exposing the vulnerabilities of a once mighty empire struggling to adapt to a rapidly changing world.
The Century of Humiliation, as it came to be known, left deep scars on the Chinese national psyche, fueling a sense of resentment towards the West and a burning desire to reclaim lost glory.
Section 2. The Dragon's Rise, from humiliation to global power. The road from the Opium Wars to the present day has been long and arduous, marked by internal strife, revolution, and remarkable economic transformation.
The Qing Dynasty, unable to stem the tide of decline, was swept away by the Xinhai Revolution in 1911, ending centuries of imperial rule and ushering in a new era of republicanism.
But the path to modernity was far from smooth.
China, weakened and divided, faced further challenges from within and without.
Section 3. The Echoes of Empire, Lessons from the Opium Wars. The Opium Wars, though a distant memory, continue to cast a long shadow over China's relations with the West.
The memory of humiliation serves as a potent reminder of the dangers of weakness and disunity, shaping China's foreign policy and its determination to secure its place on the world stage.
China's rise to global power in the 21st century, fueled by its economic prowess and growing military might, has prompted both admiration and apprehension.
The echoes of the Opium Wars resonate in the halls of power in Beijing and Washington, shaping strategic calculations and fueling debates about the future of the global order.
The lessons of the Opium Wars, however, extend far beyond the realm of geopolitics.